How you guys doing? How's everything? This is a beautiful day. So today I'm going to answer the question of how consciousness came to be, and I'm also gonna demonstrate why evil exists in this world. They go hand in hand. So let's first start off by explaining the nature of movement. Movement. To understand movement, you have to understand the principle of equivalent exchange. And equivalent exchange and cause and effect go hand in hand. They're like siblings, they work together, right? Now, the principle of equivalent exchange says for every gain, there must be a sacrifice, right? So, I'm going to demonstrate. In order for me to raise my hand, I need to will that into existence. So, I raise my hand. Now, I just moved my hand. So, in order for me to gain this position, I had to sacrifice that position, right? My hand was previously down. I had to sacrifice this position in order to gain this position. So, it's very simple. The principle of equivalent exchange says for every gain, there must be a sacrifice. So, in order for me to move this way with my head, I had to sacrifice my position of looking forward. You see? In order for me to move forward, I had to sacrifice my footstep, the position I was previously, right? Now let's further elaborate the principle of equivalent exchange. In order for me to inhale, I have to exhale. In order for me to inhale, I had to sacrifice exhale. In order for me to exhale, I had to sacrifice inhale. In order for the sun to appear, in order for daytime to be visible, the moon had to be sacrificed. The nighttime had to be sacrificed, right? In order for the nighttime to appear, the daytime had to be sacrificed. So it had to move its position, right? What else? Okay, in order for something to ebb, it has to first sacrifice flow. In order for something to flow, it had to sacrifice ebb. You see, this is movement in itself. Movement is the constant, a constant equivalent exchange or the constant repositioning of something. For instance, in order for me to gain knowledge, right, I have to sacrifice time, effort, and energy in order to gain knowledge, right? In order for me to gain discipline, I have to sacrifice laziness and procrastination. So as you can see, this principle of equivalent exchange is embedded in the universe. The principle of equivalent exchange helps us to understand movement. And in order to control movement, you need consciousness. Consciousness allows you to understand movement, right? So let's redefine consciousness now. Consciousness is the harmonization of mind and body. The mind cannot understand anything without having a body. The body needs to see, it needs to smell, it needs to taste, it needs to hear, it needs to feel in order to provide vital information to the mind. And then the mind needs the body in order to understand the outside world. So consciousness is the engine of movement. Move, right? Consciousness is also the understanding and the awareness of the individual in relationship to the exterior world, right? We have a saying in the black community that says, watch how you moving. This is a prime example of being aware of how you move, you see? So, this is how evil came to be. There's a right way to move, and there's an incorrect way to move, you see? We do not exist in isolation. We exist in an interconnected world where there's other human beings in this world. And because of consciousness, I understand my movements, I understand myself in relationship to the outside world, in relationship to other human beings. And I have to direct my movements carefully. If I do not want to bring harm and suffering to other people, if I do not want to hurt other people, I have to be consciously aware of how I move. I cannot take my actions back. I cannot take my words back because of equivalent exchange. For every gain, there has to be a sacrifice. This is why we can't rewind time, right? Because we cannot take our movements back because of the exchange, the equivalent exchange, right? For every gain, there has to be a sacrifice. And in order to control movement, you need to be conscious. Sorry, the wind blew. So, consciousness is the engine of movement. It's the controller of movement itself, right? The higher level of degree of consciousness that you have, the more control you have over your own movements. This is why I said determinism does not negate free will. Free will is a feature of consciousness. In order to say free will and choice is an illusion, you have to first destroy and debunk consciousness. Earlier, I said there's a right way to move and there's a wrong way to move. This is choice. This is where free will comes from. It comes from consciousness, and it comes from understanding movement itself. So this is where evil comes from. Evil is only a potential. You have to watch how you move because you're a conscious living being that has control over their movements. If you're not shackled, if you're not in prison, if you're a healthy human being, if you're not paralyzed, if you're not sick, right? If nobody's will is being imposed upon you, you have free will. You have the ability to move at will because of consciousness. So I hope that answers the question of where evil comes from. Evil comes from incorrect movement. I did not move in harmony with my outside world. I moved against it. I moved against nature. I moved against human beings, and thus evil is created. You have to watch how you move. Now, where does consciousness come from? This is where biogenesis comes into place, right? Biogenesis is another principle that says life begets life. If you can understand this, then you understand consciousness begets consciousness. Consciousness comes from pre-existing consciousness. In order for me to create a conscious human being, you need two existing conscious parents. This is the only way that can happen. So, consciousness is not an emergent property, it's a fundamental property. The reason why I have a subjective experience is because there's an objective experience. So think of consciousness as an ocean, a big, vast ocean, a life force. And what we are as human beings is a drop in the ocean. The objective consciousness created the subjective consciousness. Why? So that way the subjective consciousness can live according to its environment. So, whatever is determined was first willed. Cars do not build themselves. Tables do not build themselves. Buildings do not build themselves. Cell phones, none of these things build themselves. They had to be willed into existence. In order for me to determine the specifications of the car, of the building, of the chair and furniture. I have to will that in existence. So I need consciousness in order to create that. So I hope you guys understand that consciousness is what creates. Consciousness is the engine of movement, and consciousness drives movement. And because of movement, this is why evil exists. All right?